Hi there, it's me again, Jack Wallen, and I'm here to talk to you, yes, specifically you, about something. What is that something? Maybe I'll just leave you guessing. Nah, I'll tell you what I'm going to talk to you about. This discussion comes by way of the most recent book I'm writing. Now, before I get into this, I want to tell you that this doesn't just apply to writers. It actually can apply to anything you do. Seriously, anything. So let me set the stage here. With my newest book is called The Aftermath. It's a sci-fi book, and it's probably going to be my most epic book I've ever written. Probably the longest I've ever written because I got a lot to cover. Plus it's sci-fi, and sci-fi tends to be a little longer. Not quite like fantasy, but you know what I'm talking about. So for this book, I've had this idea in my to be written file for probably maybe 2 years. And over the years, I've kind of added a little to it when I've thought of something. So usually in my to be written file, I write a single sentence or a single paragraph to indicate what the story's about. I don't really get into too much detail because that's not how I write. But for some odd reason, this one I decided, I kept coming up with ideas for it and I kept adding to it. So the description for this book got a little longer than normal. It's probably 3 paragraphs long. And so I pretty much knew exactly what this story was about. I knew the narrative. I didn't know the characters. I didn't know a lot of the details, but I knew how the story was going to start and how it was going to end. But you know what they say? The best laid plans of mice and men. So here's what happened. So I finished Violent Delight's Deadly Departed and I sent it off to the beta readers. And usually when I do that, I tend to I don't take any time off, but I'll start writing the next book, but I'll go at it really slowly because I know that those beta readers are going to send their feedback to me. So I'll need to jump back into that book right away and fix things if they need to be fixed and give it one more read before I send it off to the publisher so it can be edited. So I knew that I was going to jump into the aftermath and just go, we'll just take it slow and just see what happens. I started writing it and almost immediately I realized that I had gone off the tracks. It was almost as if I threw out all those ideas I had and just plowed through and wrote whatever. I mean, I did what I do. I wrote whatever came to mind. I wrote in the moment. That's how I work. And I stepped back and I thought about it because I liked where it was going, but I thought about it and I was like, okay, so if I keep going this route, I'm not going to be able to do all those other things that I had planned. It won't work. It won't work in my story. And yet, I just kept writing. I kept sticking with what I had written, knowing full well that I was really throwing myself for a loop. And I wanted to tell the story that I had devised because it's a really good story. Now let me tell you how I tend to work when it comes to edits, because it'll pretty much tell you how I fix this problem. I'll get the file back from my editor, the first round of edits. And this doesn't usually happen because I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty good at ensuring that the narrative doesn't fall off the tracks. But if for some odd reason the editor says, okay, You got a problem. Got to fix this problem. I'll ponder her suggestion, or ponder the notion that there's an issue. And what I typically do, and this is where I believe that it can apply to everything. What I typically do is I ask myself, what's the easiest fix? How can I fix this problem without making major changes? And a lot of times, truth be told, those things can be fixed very easily. Now, I know a lot of writers who, when they get that type of feedback, they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I've got to rewrite all this stuff. I've got to cut out all these things and blah, 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 and do this. And all of a sudden, the problem that they were facing adds weeks or months or whatever to their timeline, because they're just wholesale deleting things from their manuscripts and rewriting things. Now, that's a perfectly valid approach to fixing a problem. But the way I see it is that the more I monkey with a completed manuscript, the larger the opportunity for me to add more, to inject more problems. Especially if I am scrapping a bunch of things and rewriting a chapter or a scene or whatever. I could break even more things in that story. I could create continuity issues, all sorts of things. So to avoid that, I look at it in such a way that I think that there has to be a simple fix. Because, and here's the reason why. I have spent so much time writing that book and crafting the story and the characters and all that. And the way I write it's so organic that if I all of a sudden have to go about this in a way that is inorganic, I'm not being honest with my craft and my methods. So I have, with the exception of one book, and that book was I, Zombie I, which I've talked about a lot. I have, over 20-some years, have managed to fix almost every problem that an editor has suggested very simply. And by solving those problems with that approach, I'm not only saving time, but I'm not having to all of a sudden go back and kill all my darlings. Now, I'm not against killing darlings. I've killed plenty of them over the years. Trust me. And a lot of times if I've killed something begrudgingly, I will paste it into another document and save it for later, just in case. But this time around, I was really liking what was developing, and knew that if I wanted to to fix the problem, I would either have to come up with a simple solution, or I would have to rewrite everything that I'd written. It was that far off the tracks. What did I do? Well, I spent about an hour thinking about it, just staring at the manuscript. What do I do? How do I bring this back to the original idea? And crazy enough, as crazy as it may sound, it took one sentence to solve the problem. One sentence. Now, yes, I did have to spend a lot of time sort of going through all the possibilities and mapping the beginning to the middle and trying to, you've seen, I mean, think about if you've ever seen The Good Doctor. Is that the name? Is that the name of the show about the doctor with autism? I can't think of the name. Maybe Good Doctor. Yeah, Good Doctor, I think. When he's faced with a big problem and they show these overlays on the screen of him putting all these pieces of the puzzle together and trying to solve all these problems. It was almost like that. And it was, mentally it was kind of exhausting. But in the end, the problem was solved with a single sentence. And with that one sentence, I was able to put the whole narrative back on track while saving everything I had written in the process. And the reality is, that's how I live my life. Whenever I am faced with a problem, the first thing I ask myself is, what is the easiest solution? Because trust me, I know how my mind works. You can ask my wife. If I let it, I could be faced with a problem, and then I could become locked in my mind, trying to come up with more and more difficult solutions. And the longer I ponder it, the more complicated the solution gets. So essentially, I could be faced with a little problem, and then all of a sudden that little problem has escalated to something huge simply because I was trying to fix it with an overly complex solution. So I always default to, what's the easiest solution to solving this problem? Now, does that mean that the simplest solution is the best solution? Not always. However, even the simplest solutions for a complicated problem can get you through that problem, such that you can then reflect on it and then find a better solution. But that simple solution has at least allowed you to move forward. Now, I'll continue writing this book, and I could find myself in a situation where I discover, well, that simple solution worked in that moment, but I still have other things to fix. And if that is the case, those problems will reveal themselves over time. And I have to be prepared for that. And I am. I know now what to look for to make sure that this narrative stays on track, to encompass all of the ideas I have for this book. But the thing is that simple solution allowed me to keep going forward. And for me, it is all about moving forward. I have spent the last 10 years of my life focusing very much on how to be in the moment. And I have got to the point, for better or worse, that I don't think about the past much. And I certainly try not to think about the future. I think about now, right now, sitting in front of this camera, talking to you. Yes, you know who I'm talking about. That's all I have right now. That is it. This is my world right now. I'm not thinking about anything that I need to do later. I'm not thinking about anything that I did in the past. Just thinking about now. And in that frame of mind, when I'm writing a book, it helps me because I'm not worried about any mistakes I've made in the past. I'm not worried about failures or successes that I've had. I'm just thinking about that book, that story. That's it. That's all I have is that story. And I don't worry about, oh my, and yes, in this instance, I had to go, okay, wait a second. You've jumped the shark. We need to get back on. We need to fix this before it gets out of hand. But when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about the end of the book. I'm not thinking about the middle of the book, unless I'm actually in the middle of the book. I am only thinking about what I have right then and there. I am very much an in-the-moment writer because I trust my instinct. When I'm working on creative endeavors, I trust my instinct more than I trust my intellect. Because I could overthink something. I can overthink anything to a ridiculous degree. And if I start overthinking what I'm writing, I'm going to get stuck. So it's just that moment, that one little moment in time, that paragraph, that sentence, that word. I have, on a number of occasions, been writing something and was stuck for a word, or I wrote something and I thought, there's a better word for that. And I'll sit there for 5 or 10 minutes just staring at that word, going, okay, word, it's just you and me. How are we going to do this? You got to go. Something's got to take your place. And I'm going to sit here and stare at you until I figure that out. And it's like a staring contest with a cat. But that's how I work. So the moral of this story is, when you are faced with a problem, try the simplest solution first. That doesn't mean it's the only solution. Doesn't mean it's the best solution. But try the simplest solution first. And that will probably at least get you through that moment so that you can then figure out a better solution. But that simple solution will at least have allowed you to resolve the problem to a certain degree such that you can move forward and not just sit there and obsess. Because we all do that. Live in the moment, find the simplest solution, and life will be much better. Whether you're an artist or not. And that, my friends, is all I have to say to you today. Don't take that the wrong way. I would sit here and chat with you ad nauseum if I could. But I don't want to take up that much of your time because I know how precious it is. Anyway, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending a little bit of time with me today, or whenever it is that you decided to watch this. If you know of anybody that could benefit from this, share it with them. Can't hurt, right? Maybe even help. Because that's why I'm here, to help. To spread a little kindness and help. Anyway, I hope that you and everyone you know and love have a wonderful, wonderful day.